At this point in the process, I've put in local color. I've really filled out the value. The painting in many ways looks like the person I'm trying to paint, but it's not done yet. If you look closely, you can see that it's still quite transparent. It has a very generic texture where I can see the canvas coming through. Sometimes you might want to have that if that's a stylistic quality, but it can also make a painting look really incomplete or maybe kind of sophomoric. So I'm going to give this at least one full new layer. And beforehand, my paint was really kind of watery and thin, maybe kind of like milk or cream. But now I'm going to be adding some texture paste or using the paint right out of the tube, and it's going to be much more buttery. So I've actually put all the colors I'm going to need out on my palette, and I've got some texture paste. I like Nova Colors texture paste, but there's a lot of other really good ones. Just find one that works well for you, or you can buy some more heavyweight paints that work well for you. I will probably be able to finish this in about one more layer, but take as many layers as you have to do to finish this. It might take you 2, 3, or more. The point is that it'll have a nice consistent texture and paint handling throughout. Nothing looks kind of uncared for or unfinished or kind of unintentionally transparent. So that's just going to depend on your style and your way of handling. You're going to pick some kind of brushstroke at this point, some kind of mark making, and treat everything the same way. Maybe it's dots or pointillism, maybe it's kind of slashes, maybe it's kind of swirls or expressive mark making, maybe it's something more blended. Maybe you want it to be really blended and you need a little bit of a retarder to slow the drying time. Now, as far as my process, I'm probably going to be starting from the face and the neck and the ears to work up the skin. Then I'm going to move to the background and give that another layer. And then I'm going to work on the hair and the clothing because they kind of sit on top of everything. That's the usual order that I work in at this point. And of course, doing this means I'm going to be covering up everything I've done at this point. Covering up some things that I might really like. And you got to remember that you have to be willing to kill your darlings, destroy things that you maybe really like or did well, in order to make the whole painting work well. You have to be able to let go of some things and just trust that you can do them again, and maybe it doesn't come out exactly the same or come out right the first time. Do it again, you'll get it, okay? Just don't be afraid. You got to be a little fearless at this point in your painting and just know that you got to sacrifice the parts for the whole. So I'm going to get started again, working things up from my highlights, starting with any part that might be white or off-white, moving towards my midtones using ochres and cadmium red, then moving towards my shadows, which are burnt sienna, burnt umber, black in some areas, and my cool tone, or my cool color, which is in this case is green, but might be blue or purple for you. Keep up working in the same order, using the same technique that I showed you in the last video. For me, I might not get quite as dark in this area, in the shadows, as I did in the last pass. This is a great time to make some final adjustments, neaten things up, clean up some areas, be a little bit more precise and detailed, right? After the next pass, you really want to have all of your drawing or color problems fixed, right? Don't go on to a final texture layer until you feel quite confident in where you are as far as any drawing issues. Okay, let's get going on this, and yeah, you'll see the final results. I'm using a thicker brush right now. This one has natural fibers, allowing me to get a little bit thicker with the paint and a little more expressive. And I'm mixing in some texture paste with every stroke that I'm doing. You may find that you have to add a little bit more reds that make a little more pinkish color in certain areas, particularly the nose, the cheeks, certainly the lips. Anywhere where there's a little more capillaries. So you might find that in the ears, perhaps even the chin or Adam's apple. Usually where bone or some organs come to the surface, there's some more capillaries there. It makes it a little bit more pink and make it feel a little more natural there. Doesn't take much. Just a tiny amount of red will make all the difference. Really, my proportion for yellow ochre to red generally, it's about 2 parts yellow ochre to 1 part red or less. So we're really more kind of yellowy than we are reddish generally. But of course, everybody's different. You gotta pay attention to the person is who you are painting. You got to look at the lighting that you're dealing with, right? It's going to be specific to what you're dealing with to some degree. Don't forget, it's okay to overdo the warmth right now. Don't worry about putting in a little too much red or warm colors, because when we put in those browns later on, and especially when we put in our cool color, it's really going to neutralize them. So don't worry again about overdoing it. Also, make sure you stick to the plan. Don't skip a color. Don't skip that burnt sienna, right? The idea is to keep our light, warm colors a little separated from those dark, neutral colors, right? Because we get those whites mixed with the browns, they're going to get really muddy, okay? So this is all about kind of maintaining that liveliness and warmth. Just don't be afraid about getting a little too much red in there. As I work through all of my warm colors, white, yellow ochre, red, umber, and sienna, I'm ready to start adding in my cool. And like I said before, this is just a time where you have to be kind of brave with it. And it's really important that you try to match the underlying value, right? So I'm going to put darker greens on my darker brownish areas, middle greens where midtones are, and if I need to put lighter greens in, I'll mix those with white. So, this is just kind of where you got to be a little expressive, and it's just going to be kind of a fun thing to do. And I find it just is easiest to usually start in the shadows. It's kind of the most forgiving area to do this in. And you can be really kind of playful with this. It's just wonderfully fun thing to do. Here you go. I'm going kind of overdoing it, but it's a painting. You can be a little playful with this. If you don't like what you do, you're going to paint over it. In some ways, it even feels kind of natural because it maybe feels like it's reflecting some of the greenish light that we've got going on in the background. Next, I'm going to go for the eyes. I'm going to start with the color in the iris, which for me is sort of a yellow ochre brownish color, pretty dark. Might even bring a little bit of green in there from the background. And then I'm going to paint the whites of the eye, which in my case are also not white. They're in shadow. They're pretty dark, so I'll probably bring a little bit of blue, a little bit of brown in there to kind of get a sort of neutral sort of gray. And then lastly, I will paint the ring around the iris, the pupil, the highlight, which also might not be white. It might not be the brightest thing in your painting. Compare it to the nose, which is probably going to be more in highlight. And then we can come on top with the eyelashes. And remember that those eyelashes are going to be thicker on top than on the bottom. Sometimes you don't even need to paint anything in on those bottom lashes. Really check to see if they're apparent. If you make them too thick on the bottom, or if you go all the way across to the tear duct, it's going to make it look like they have makeup on. Right? Normally, the eyelashes go all the way across on the top, but on the bottom, they're very sparse. They only go maybe about 2/3 the way across from the outside to the inside. They stop short of the tear duct, usually. So just pay close attention and see what you got there. When dealing with the tear duct, I like to use kind of a pinkish sort of skin tone. All right, just a little yellow ochre. red, and a bit of white. Sometimes it has to go a little darker because it's in the shadows, so I'll use one of my brown colors. Sometimes there's a cast shadow in the eye too, caused by the eyelashes. So pay attention to that. Can make it seem more dimensional. Once again, the hair is a great place to be expressive, to try out any cool colors you're thinking about playing with. It's an easy area to correct because it is so kind of loose, and there's really hard to make a mistake, so to speak, in that area. Bring in some yellow ochre to make some highlights. And I think after that, I'm going to come back with some more of this green and put that into the shadows. I like working wet into wet for this. So I'm trying to work quickly. I'm kind of working in sections so it stays kind of wet since I'm working with acrylic. If I was working with oils, it would stay open for much longer. And now putting in that green a few last places. This is kind of actually one of my favorite parts to do. Just kind of go with it and step back a little bit and just feel it out, see how it goes. You can start out with just a little bit and just see how you feel with it. If it looks wrong, I recommend changing the value. Remember, all color problems are value problems. That means not really an issue of hue or saturation. Now I'll probably come back in and just touch up a few last little spots. But yeah, at this point, my painting feels most of the way there. I'll probably let it dry and see if anything feels unfinished, doesn't feel rich enough. If so, I'll have to come back in and give that area another layer. If that makes the rest of the painting feel unbalanced, that means I have to give a new layer to everything, right? The whole painting has to be holistically complete, right? Don't be afraid to kill your darlings at this point. Give it another layer if it needs it, make it feel richer.